This is a game between Grandmasters Marasovic and Adams, and it is black to move here. Black moves his king up. Okay, now I would like you to look for the power moves. Do an offensive power move evaluation. Look for power move weaknesses in the black camp. So pause the video. Remember that one of your strategic goals is to not only increase your mobility, but to decrease the mobility of your opponent's pieces as well. So if your analysis was complete, you see that there's a undefended pawn here. There's an undefended pawn here. And there's a power move here with the pawn, little guy harassing big guy right here. And with these 2 points in mind, we see that white launched little guy harassing big guy because the knight can't penetrate into enemy territory here. He's got all these squares covered, so he's going to have to retreat. He can't even come here because we have 2 rooks on this square. So he retreats here. Now this pawn here is actually preventing the knight from coming back into play here. So white knows that he has this undefended pawn here, which is a little bit difficult to defend. So he prepares to defend it. It's going to take 2 moves. He pushes this g-pawn here, and then black does indeed go to attack this pawn, and now white supports it and defends it here. When you have an advantage in mobility, when your opponent's pieces are cramped, you want to try and maintain that as much as possible until you can convert that advantage into something more tangible. So black captures the pawn, and white recaptures, and black has accomplished it, creating an undefended pawn. And now look for power move weaknesses in the black camp again, although it is black to move. Pause the video. Okay, we see this pawn is undefended now, as well as this pawn. And black corrects this weakness here by pushing the pawn. Now the bishop can't attack this pawn. And now remember this undefended pawn here, so white goes on the attack of this pawn with the rook. It's very difficult for black to defend this pawn. He can't push because white has 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers here, and he'll be able to win a pawn. So the only way to defend this pawn, and defend it he must, is for the rook to come up. Perhaps there were other moves, but he decided to defend. I mean, defensively, this is the only move. And remember, every time your opponent or you move a piece, you have left something behind. So this rook was doing its job. It was doing something else, and now it's changed jobs. So now it has left this pawn undefended. So pause the video and see if we can take advantage of this power move number 3, undefended pieces or pawns. Pause the video. And also that we have this this pawn is already being attacked once. See if we can initiate a gang attack as well. And you probably found knight to d5, and now we have in a knight fork ultimately here. This is the knight is attacking both pawns, and as I mentioned a moment ago, whenever a piece moves, it's left something behind. So this knight was preventing the penetration of these rooks, and we see now we have this undefended bishop that the knight was defending, and now the rook goes after this bishop. Before you decide how to handle this this move, realize that we also have an undefended pawn here. If the bishop moves, the rook will be able to take this pawn. So find a good move for white, which simultaneously takes care of this problem and perhaps is also an attack. Pause the video. Okay, we see here that if the knight swings in here, it defends the bishop, and also simultaneously attacks this pawn, which incidentally will also be a check. So white slides down, defends the bishop, and threatens to take this pawn. And now this pawn is still under attack. So this pawn push here has loosened up the black position very well, especially since black's pieces are black's knight here is cramped. So black is striking out now and pushes this pawn. He takes back, and basically black is just trying to decide which pawns to give up to try and create some type of counterplay. But it really is too late for black, and now the knight is free to capture with check. And the king moves up, and the bishop captures another pawn. So white is ahead in pawns and goes on to win this game.